I want you to try something for me right now. It's a little experiment.
Oh, I like experiments.
Yeah. Close your eyes.
Okay.
Take a deep breath in, hold it for a second, and now just let it out slowly. Okay. Now, I want you to focus your entire attention on the center of your forehead, just slightly above your eyebrows, right in the middle there.
It is a very distinct, almost magnetic sensation, isn't it?
It really is. It's that specific spot where you feel a headache looming after a long day of staring at screens,
Yeah.
Sure, but for many people throughout history, it has been so much more than that. It is a space colloquially known as the mind's eye. It's where you feel that sudden flash of intuition, that gut feeling that arrives before your brain has actually processed the logic. It's the sensation of knowing something without having the receipts for how you know it.
And that physical sensation, that pressure or tingling in the forehead, has driven thousands of years of human obsession. There has always been this pervasive feeling across almost every culture that there is a gateway inside of us.
A gateway, yeah.
A literal biological trapdoor between the meat and chemistry of our bodies and the ineffable mystery of the spiritual realm.
Exactly. And the question we are wrestling with today is massive. Is there a physical key to that door? Is there a literal seat of the soul buried in the gray matter of our brains? Or is this all just a romantic metaphor that we've taken too literally because, we desperately want magic to be real?
It is the ultimate boundary dispute between hard neuroscience and ancient mythology.
Welcome, listeners, to another My Mind MashUps deep dive, where we unravel mysteries, spark curiosity, and make sense of complex ideas together.
Today is going to be an exercise in separating signal from noise. We are navigating the borderlands of neurobiology, philosophy, and mysticism.
And we have a very specific target. We are taking a massive stack of research, academic articles, and scientific reviews on the pineal gland and dimethyltryptamine, better known as DMT.
The big one.
Oh, yeah. We're going to strip down the calcification panic that's all over the internet. We're going to analyze the spirit molecule theories, and we're going to look at the hard evidence regarding whether humans are biologically hardwired to hallucinate.
And I think it's important to state up front, this isn't about debunking for the sport of it. It's about understanding why these stories resonate so deeply with us and what the biology actually tells us about the human operating system. Because often, the biological reality is even stranger than the fiction.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. Before we jump in, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy content that makes you think. It really helps us keep these deep dives going. Okay, let's start at the foundation. The seat of the soul.
That is a very heavy title for such a physically, insignificant organ.
Let's ground this physically first, just so everyone can visualize it. If we were to cut open the brain, metaphorically speaking, of course, what are we looking at? Where is this thing?
Physically, it is, it's pretty underwhelming if you were expecting a glowing, pulsating crystal.
Yeah.
The pineal gland is a tiny neuroendocrine organ. It's shaped like a pine cone, which is actually where it gets its name. Pinus is Latin for pine.
Right.
And it is tucked deep in the epithalamus, right near the anatomical center of the brain, sort of sandwiched between the two hemispheres.
And when you say tiny, are we talking grape-sized or smaller?
We are talking about the size of a large grain of rice. Maybe a pea at most, roughly 5 to 8 millimeters.
Wow.
But despite the size, it has carried massive historical weight, and the architect of that weight, the man who really put it on the map for the Western world, is René Descartes.
The I think, therefore I am philosopher.
The very same. In the 17th century, Descartes made a really specific anatomical and philosophical claim. He identified the pineal gland as the principal seat of the soul.
Okay, so why there? Out of the whole brain, why that little rice grain?
Well, we have to give him some credit here. This wasn't just a random guess thrown at a dartboard. He was looking at the gross anatomy of the brain, and he noticed something peculiar that set this gland apart from everything else you could see.
What stood out to him?
Symmetry. Or rather, the lack of it. If you look at the human brain, almost everything is paired. You have a left hemisphere, a right hemisphere. You have 2 amygdalae, 2 hippocampia, 2 lobes of the thalamus.
Everything's got a twin.
Exactly. But the pineal gland appeared to be solitary. It sat right on the midline, appearing to be a singular, unpaired structure.
Oh, I see where he's going. So his logic was, I have one cohesive thought process. I don't have 2 separate consciousnesses, so the processing center must be a singular organ.
Precisely. He reasoned that since our conscious experience is unified, we don't perceive 2 separate worlds through our 2 eyes, right? Yeah. So there must be a single physical point where all sensory input merges before it reaches the soul. He viewed the pineal gland as the valve. the pneumatic interface between the res extensa, the physical realm of the body, and the res cogitans, the mental realm of the spirit.
A pneumatic interface, like with air pressure.
Yeah, he actually thought animal spirits, which were kind of like a subtle gas flowed through tubes in the brain, and the pineal gland tilted and wobbled to direct them, like a little traffic controller.
That's amazing. It's a compelling piece of deductive reasoning for the 1600s. But scientifically?
Scientifically, it holds no water today. I mean, for one, we know now that the pineal gland actually is comprised of two hemispheres. They are just deeply fused during fetal development.
Ah, so it is paired after all.
It is bilaterally symmetrical, just like the rest of the brain. And more importantly, we know that consciousness isn't in one spot. It's a network phenomenon. There is no single CPU or seat in the brain. It's a distributed process involving millions of connections firing all at once.
But Descartes really kicked open the door for the West to obsess over this gland. However, the concept of a third eye predates him by thousands of years, specifically in Eastern traditions. I feel like this is where the modern confusion really stems from.
Right, and this is where we need to be very careful with our terms, because we are mashing up two different worlds. In yogic and Hindu traditions, you have the Ajna chakra. This is located at the center of the forehead, that point we focused on earlier.
The third eye chakra.
Correct. The Ajna is described as the center of intuition, foresight, and higher perception. It's the eye that sees inward. But historically, in the ancient Vedic texts, this was a subtle body concept.
A subtle body. What does that mean?
It means it was a metaphysical framework for understanding the flow of energy and consciousness. It wasn't originally an empirical anatomical claim about the specific pineal gland tissue inside the skull.
So the ancient yogis weren't performing autopsies, pointing at that little rice grain organ and saying, that specific tissue is the ajna.
No, not at all. The mapping of the spiritual ajna onto the biological pineal gland is a relatively modern syncretism. It's largely a product of the late 19th and early 20th century theosophy. You know, figures like Madame Blavatsky and later the New Age movements of the 1960s and 70s.
So they took the spiritual symbol.
And they tried to ground it in Western anatomy to give it a kind of scientific validity. They wanted to find the physical hardware for the spiritual software.
We do seem to have a habit of wanting to find the God spot in the biology. We want the magic to be tangible. We want to be able to point to a spot on an MRI and say, that's where my soul lives.
We want the hardware to explain the software, and that narrative has evolved into the modern mythos we see online today. This whole idea that this gland is a suppressed organ of supernatural power, a cosmic antenna that has been shut off by modern life.
Which brings us to the stoned ape theory and the work of Terence McKenna. But let's pin that for a moment. I want to strip away the magic completely for a second. Let's look at the source material on the biology. If this thing isn't beaming our souls to the astral plane, what is its actual 9-to-5 job? Because evolution doesn't usually keep organs around just for decoration.
No, it definitely doesn't. It has a critical job, but it's less about seeing other dimensions and more about synchronizing this one. It's a timekeeper.
It's a clock.
Well, technically, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the SCN, is the master clock. The pineal gland is more like the announcer.
An announcer, okay.
And it is a highly vascularized secretory organ, and here is a key technical detail that explains a lot of its behavior. It sits outside the blood-brain barrier.
Wait, hold on. Let's unpack that. I thought the defining feature of the brain was that it's locked behind the blood-brain barrier, that fortress wall that protects our neurons from toxins and bacteria in the blood.
Most of the brain is protected by that barrier, yes. But the pineal gland is what we call a circumventricular organ. It has fenestrated capillaries.
Fenestrated.
It means windowed. The blood vessels feeding the pineal gland have tiny pores or gaps in them. They are, for lack of a better word, leaky.
Why on earth would you want a leaky brain part? That sounds like a design flaw.
It sounds like one, but it's essential for its function. Because it's an endocrine gland, it needs to release hormones directly into the general bloodstream to reach the entire body instantly. If it were behind the barrier, it couldn't get its signal out.
Oh, I see.
And it also needs to sample what's in the blood to know what's going on in the rest of the body.
And the primary product it's pumping out through those windows is melatonin.
Exactly. The vampire hormone, or the darkness hormone. It is chemically derived from serotonin. Inside the pinealocytes, the working cells of the gland, you have a complex enzymatic pathway. You take the amino acid tryptophan, convert it to serotonin, and then, crucially, serotonin is converted into melatonin.
And this conversion isn't random. It's light-dependent, right?
Strictly light-dependent. This is the whole mechanism. There is a rate-limiting enzyme called ANAT that stands for aralkylamine and acetyltransferase.
That's a mouthful.
It is, which is why scientists actually call it the timezyme.
The timezyme, I love that. That's much better.
It's catchy, isn't it? Here's how it works. Light hits your retina. That signal travels down the optic nerve to the SCN, the master clock in your hypothalamus. The SCN then sends a signal to the pineal gland that inhibits ANAT. It literally shuts the factory down.
So sunlight hits my eyes, and the SCN tells the pineal gland, stop the production line. It's daytime. We need to be awake.
Correct. But when the sun goes down and darkness falls, that brake is released. The inhibition stops. ANAT fires up, it starts converting all the stored serotonin to melatonin, and the pineal gland floods the system.
That melatonin tells the body.
It signals to every cell in your body. It is night. Lower the core temperature, drop the blood pressure, initiate cellular repair protocols, sleep.
So without this little pine cone, we'd be in a state of permanent biological jet lag. We wouldn't know when to rest.
We would be chemically unmoored from the rotation of the Earth. Our whole system would be out of sync.
Now, there's a detail in the research that I found really confusing, and I think it fuels a lot of the myths. The sources mention reptilian eyes. People on the internet often claim the pineal gland is literally a physical eye inside our head. Is there any truth to that, or is that just internet debris?
There is a fascinating evolutionary truth buried in there. If we look at the phylogeny of vertebrates, the family tree of life, in some non-mammalian species, like certain lizards, lampreys, and frogs, the pineal complex is indeed photosensitive.
Meaning it reacts to light directly, like if I shine a flashlight on a lizard's head.
Directly. In the tuatara lizard from New Zealand, for example, it is called a parietal eye. It sits right on top of the head, under a thin layer of translucent skin or scale. It actually has a rudimentary lens, a cornea, and a retina.
No way.
Yeah. It detects light and shadows from above, mostly to detect avian predators swooping down.
So lizards basically have a functional third eye looking at the sky. That's incredible.
In a rudimentary sense, yes, it's a solar dosimeter, it measures light intensity. But here's the critical distinction for our listeners. In mammals, including humans, that direct link was lost.
Why? What happened?
During our evolution, as the neocortex expanded and grew over the top of the brain, the pineal gland retreated deep into the brain tissue. It lost its photoreceptors.
So it's no longer an eye?
It is no longer a sensory organ. It is a secretory organ. It relies entirely on electrical signals sent from our actual eyes via the nervous system to know if it's light or dark. So, calling the human pineal gland a third eye is biologically inaccurate, even if it's evolutionarily nostalgic. We traded the eye for a more integrated, networked timing system.
Okay, so we've established the baseline. It's a melatonin factory that keeps us on schedule. But let's be real. If you search pineal gland on TikTok or YouTube right now, you aren't going to find videos about ANAT enzymes and circadian rhythms. You're going to find videos about calcification.
Ah, yes, the crusty eye panic.
It is a massive topic. The theory goes that our pineal glands are turning to stone, blocked by modern toxins, and this is cutting us off from our spiritual potential. Let's look at the hard data. What is brain sand?
The medical term is corpora arenacea. It literally translates to bodies of sand. And it is very, very real. If you look at a standard X-ray or CT scan of an adult brain, the pineal gland often lights up like a bright white beacon because it is dense with calcium deposits.
What are these deposits made of? Are they stones?
They're basically tiny stones. It's mostly hydroxyapatite, which is a form of calcium phosphate. It's essentially the same mineral matrix that makes up your bones and your teeth.
And why is it happening there? Is the brain turning into bone? That sounds terrifying.
It sounds scary, but we have to go back to the blood supply. Remember those fenestrated, leaky capillaries?
Yeah.
The pineal gland is incredibly vascular. Relative to its size, it receives a blood flow second only to the kidneys.
Wow. So it's just getting washed with a massive amount of blood constantly.
Exactly. It is a high traffic zone. And because of that high flow and the specific metabolic activity in the gland, calcium precipitates out of the blood and forms these little concentric layers of deposits. It's similar to how a pearl forms in an oyster or how limescale forms in a kettle with hard water.
Okay, so the big question, is this a disease? Is this a sign of dysfunction? Because the internet says if you have a calcified pineal gland, you're basically a spiritual zombie.
Well, let's look at the prevalence. A systematic review and meta-analysis, which is the gold standard of data aggregation, showed the pooled prevalence of pineal calcification is approximately 61.65%.
61%.
Yeah.
So the majority of humans walking around have this.
Yes. And that number goes up significantly with age. By the time you are in your 70s or 80s, it is almost universal. If this were a disease, it would be the most common pandemic in human history.
Right.
The ubiquity suggests it is a normal physiological process associated with aging, much like your arteries stiffening or your skin losing elasticity.
But does it break the clock? Does a calcified gland stop making melatonin? That's the core worry.
That is the controversial part. There are studies showing an association. People with heavy calcification often produce less melatonin and suffer from more insomnia.
Okay, so there is a link.
There's a link. They're also statistically more likely to have neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's.
That sounds serious. That validates the fear, doesn't it?
It validates that there is a connection, but we must respect the golden rule of science. Correlation is not causation.
Okay.
Does calcification cause Alzheimer's? Or does the process that causes Alzheimer's also cause calcification? Or, even more likely, do they simply both happen as we get older? The consensus currently leans toward it being a marker of aging, an epiphenomenon, not necessarily the root cause of the disease.
An epiphenomenon, so a side effect.
A side effect, exactly. It's like gray hair. Gray hair happens when you get old, and getting frail happens when you get old, but the gray hair isn't making you frail.
That's a crucial distinction, and we can't talk about calcification without talking about the boogeyman in this story. Fluoride.
Fluoride hypothesis.
The claim is that fluoride in water and toothpaste is a targeted weapon, or at least an accidental poison, that specifically targets the pineal gland to calcify it and close the eye. What does the chemistry say?
The chemistry confirms one specific part of that claim. Fluoride does accumulate in the pineal gland.
It does.
Yes. Because of that high blood flow we mentioned, and because fluoride has a high chemical affinity for calcium, it gets trapped there. The fluoride ions in the blood bind to the calcium crystals to form fluorapatite, which is even harder than hydroxyapatite.
So the fluoride is physically there. The skeptics are right about that.
They are right that it is present. The concentration of fluoride in the pineal gland can be higher than in bone. However, and this is the vital nuance, the leap from fluoride is present to fluoride shuts down the gland's function is not supported by strong evidence.
So there's no study showing that people who drink fluoridated water have zero melatonin.
No. The calcification is primarily calcium. The fluoride is a hitchhiker on the calcium crystals. The idea that removing fluoride from your diet will decalcify your gland or suddenly open a spiritual gateway is, scientifically speaking, unsupported. The gland calcifies because of age and metabolic activity, not just because of fluoride exposure.
It's a classic case of taking a biological fact fluoride accumulation and spinning a narrative around it that the data doesn't quite support.
Exactly. It takes a kernel of truth and pops it into a giant bowl of conspiracy.
I want to pause here for a second. We've covered a lot of dense biology, from blood-brain barriers to hydroxyapatite to the time zone. If this is resonating with you, if you're enjoying peeling back these layers and getting to the actual facts, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next deep dive. We've got a lot more ground to cover, specifically regarding the spirit molecule.
We've covered the clock and the rock. Now we have to talk about the trip.
DMT, and dimethyltryptamine.
The most potent, short-acting psychedelic known to man.
This is the part of the story that really captures the imagination, largely thanks to Dr. Rick Strassman and the late legendary Terence McKenna.
The titans of the field, absolutely.
Let's steelman the argument. If I am a devout believer in the pineal DMT theory, what is my best argument? What is the story I'm telling myself?
The argument is elegant and incredibly appealing. It posits that the pineal gland is a biological portal. The theory claims that the gland produces massive surges of DMT at pivotal moments of existence, specifically birth, death, and during deep REM sleep.
And because DMT induces these profound otherworldly experiences.
The theory suggests this surge is the chemical mechanism for the soul's entry and exit. It explains near-death experiences, the tunnel of light, meeting deceased relatives, the feeling of transcending the body, the life review. The argument is that we are biologically hardwired to trip at the moment of death to facilitate the release of consciousness from the body.
And McKenna took it a step further with the stoned ape theory.
Right. He did. He looked at human evolution, specifically the rapid expansion of the brain's size and complexity in early hominids, and proposed that dietary changes were the catalyst. He argued that early humans encountered psilocybin mushrooms on the African savanna, perhaps following cattle herds.
And eating them changed us.
He argued that consuming these psychedelics catalyzed neurogenesis brain growth and the development of language, religion, and culture. He essentially argued that we ate our way to consciousness.
It's such a romantic narrative. It unifies evolution, spirituality, and chemistry into one neat package.
It does. It satisfies our desire for a grand unified theory of the soul. It tells us that the magic is built right into our hardware.
But our job here is the reality check. We need to look at the data. We know exogenous DMT stuff you smoke or inject is real. It rocks people's worlds.
Undeniably. It creates a rapid onset, high-intensity breakthrough experience where users often report meeting intelligent entities, seeing impossible geometries, and feeling a sense of being more real than real.
The question is, do we make it? And do we make it in the pineal gland?
The answer is yes, we make it. But the where and how much are the plot twists that really complicate the story.
Let's start with the rats.
The rat studies are the cornerstone of the believer's argument. In 2013, a study at the University of Michigan finally proved that the pineal glands of live rats do produce DMT. They used a technique called microdialysis, where they insert a tiny probe to sample fluids directly from the tissue.
Okay, so that's a win for the theory. Mammal pineal glands can make DMT.
It is a proof of concept. It proved the biosynthesis is possible in a mammal, but, rats are not humans. And when we started looking for the machinery in humans, the story got weird.
How so?
To make DMT, you need a specific enzyme. We talked about enzymes earlier for melatonin. For DMT, you need an enzyme called INMT.
INMT.
Indolithylamine and methyltransferase. Think of INMT as the factory worker that assembles the DMT molecule from a precursor.
Okay, following.
We found the gene for INMT in humans, but when researchers looked at gene expression to see where this factory worker is most active, it wasn't the pineal gland.
Where was it?
The lungs.
The lungs?
The lungs? And the adrenal glands.
Wait, the lungs? You're kidding.
I'm not. The expression of the enzyme needed to create the spirit molecule is significantly higher in your lungs and your heart than it is in your brain.
That's the point. So if there is a seat of the soul, biologically speaking, it's my respiratory system.
It certainly reframes the importance of breathwork, doesn't it? But biologically, this is a major blow to the pineal-centric theory. If the pineal gland was the primary DMT factory for the body, we would expect the enzyme expression to be highest there. It simply isn't. The machinery is distributed throughout the periphery of the body.
Okay, that's a fascinating pivot. But let's play devil's advocate. Even if it's coming from my lungs or adrenals, is there enough of it to make me hallucinate?
This is the quantity problem, and honestly, this is the hurdle that the theory trips over and falls flat.
Break down the numbers for us.
We have found endogenous DMT in human blood and cerebrospinal fluid. It's there, but the levels are trace. We are talking about minute subpsychoactive concentrations.
Too low to feel.
Orders of magnitude too low. To get a psychedelic effect from DMT, you need to flood the brain's receptors. You need to overwhelm the monoamine oxidase, or MAO enzymes, that break DMT down almost instantly. Our bodies are incredibly efficient at destroying DMT. It has a half-life of just a few minutes in the blood.
So the trace amounts floating around in us are being scrubbed out before they can build up and do anything.
Exactly. It's like trying to get drunk on a single drop of beer dissolved in an Olympic swimming pool. The comparison in the literature is striking. The pineal gland produces melatonin every single night. It's a robust, measurable production. If it were producing DMT at even a fraction of that level, we would be in a constant state of visionary delirium. We wouldn't be able to drive, work, or function.
So we aren't walking around with a loaded psychedelic gun in our heads waiting to go off.
The evidence strongly suggests we are not.
What about the death surge? The idea that the dam breaks when we die and floods the brain.
It remains a powerful hypothesis with zero direct evidence. We have never measured a DMT spike in a dying human brain. It's ethically and logistically almost impossible to study. You can't exactly stick a probe in someone's brain while they're passing away.
So NDEs, the tunnels of light, the profound sense of peace, what explains those if not DMT?
Current neuroscience leans toward other explanations. Hypoxia, lack of oxygen to the brain, and a massive cascade of endorphins and glutamate. When the brain begins to shut down, the normal inhibition systems fail. You get runaway electrical activity in the visual cortex. That can create the tunnel effect fading peripheral vision without needing a specific psychedelic molecule.
So to recap the investigation so far, the pineal gland is a light-sensitive clock. It calcifies because of high blood flow and age, not a conspiracy.
Mhm.
And while we do have the ingredients for DMT in our bodies, they're mostly in our lungs, and the quantities are likely far too small to make us trip.
That is the sober and maybe unromanticized reality based on the current science.
Like, comment, and subscribe to hear more My Mind MashUps deep dives.
Yeah.
Because we aren't done yet. We have to synthesize this.
We do, because if we stop there, it feels like a debunking. It feels like we've just stripped all the magic out of the world, and I don't think that's the right takeaway at all.
I agree. Because the experience of the third eye, that feeling of intuition, of insight, that is real. People feel that.
Absolutely. We need to distinguish between meaning and mechanics.
Meaning without mechanics. Unpack that for us.
The Ajna chakra is a valid, powerful system for understanding human psychology. It represents our capacity for insight, for pattern recognition, for looking inward. That truth remains even if the biological organ we've associated with it isn't literally a cosmic radio.
It's like heartbreak. We know the heart is just a muscle, a pump. It doesn't literally break into pieces when we are sad. But the experience of heartbreak is one of the most real, painful things a human can feel.
Perfect analogy. The symbol is true, even if the anatomy is just a metaphor. The map is not the territory. The feeling is real, regardless of the specific chemical pathway.
And regarding the DMT, even if it's not making us trip, the fact that it's there at all is strange, isn't it? Why have it?
It is. Evolution is thrifty. It rarely keeps complex chemical pathways around for no reason. Why are we making any DMT in our lungs? That's a huge unanswered question.
So what could it be doing?
That is the new frontier of research. Some scientists speculate that endogenous DMT might act as a neuromodulator. It binds to something called the sigma-1 receptor.
What does the sigma-1 receptor do? Is it a trip button?
No, surprisingly, it's involved in protecting cells from oxidative stress and regulating inflammation. It's part of the cell's survival kit. It's possible that trace amounts of DMT are part of our neuroprotective system.
A maintenance chemical.
A maintenance chemical, rather than a visionary one.
That's a huge shift from spirit molecule to stress management molecule.
Science often trades glamour for utility, but in a way, keeping your cells alive and resilient is pretty spiritual, if you ask me.
This has been a wild ride. We went from Descartes' animal spirits to lizard eyes to lung-based psychedelics and bone sand in the brain.
It really puts the deep in deep dive.
So, to bring it all home for everyone listening, the pineal gland is a master clock, working hard to keep your sleep cycles aligned with the sun. It gets a little crusty with age due to high blood flow, which is normal biological wear and tear.
And the third eye is a powerful psychological framework for intuition, but not a biological eye.
And DMT is present in our bodies, but likely not playing the starring role in the movie of our lives that pop culture wants it to.
A fair and balanced summary.
But I want to leave you with a provocative thought, a little something to chew on as you go about your day.
Let's hear it.
We know the ingredients for a psychedelic experience, DMT, are sitting in our lungs, our blood, our adrenals right now. Even if the levels are tiny, even if they aren't making the walls melt, what if they're doing something subtle to our consciousness? What if that tiny trace amount of spirit molecule is necessary just for us to feel normal? What if we're essentially microdosing ourselves every second of every day, and that background hum of DMT is what gives our consciousness its specific human flavor? What if reality is the trip?
That is a fascinating question. If we could somehow remove it completely, would the world look gray? Would that little spark of consciousness go out?
We don't know, and that is why we keep diving.
Indeed.
Find My Mind MashUps everywhere you listen. Amazon Music, Audible, Facebook, Pocket Casts, Spotify, TikTok, and YouTube.
And drop your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective could shape our next deep dive. Did this ruin the magic for you, or did it just make the reality of our biology even more mysterious? We want to know.
Until next time, keep your mind open, but maybe keep your pineal gland facts straight.